Hi there, this is Shauna from the Foiled Fox, and I am excited to be back again with a new project. This is using a new stamp set, a stamp and die set actually, from Paper Tray Ink and Ink to Paper collection. There is a little bit of a snapshot of it, but we'll get acquainted with it. But first, let's look at the stamp set. This stamp set is called Growth, and it has all these house plants and pots and lights and sentiments and shelves. It has all sorts of goodies in it. And then of course it has the matching die set. Another thing that I'm going to be using is something that came out a few months ago, which was real popular, is the sunburst border. If you have the sunburst frame, it'll work for this as well. But I'm going to first take a piece of Bristol paper, and I'm going to take little tick marks, and I'm going to mark a ½ inch all the way around. And it's really easy to use this ruler because you can see through it. It's got a grid to it. I can just count over 4 squares, and I know that's a ½ inch, and it just gets them right in the perfect position. It makes it really easy when you can see through it. You know exactly where you've been. But I'm doing this on all 4 sides, and then I'm going to take I'm going to take some Post-it tape and tape it down. I am putting it on a board so that I can move it around more easily. If I taped it to my glass mat, I would have a heck of a time moving that around. So there, I just line up those little tick marks, and I mount this tape on there. And if you're real meticulous about it, then you know that you don't have to do any trimming afterwards. It'll be perfect. I covered up one of my tick marks, so I'm just going to put that in, and then I'm just lining it up, and now I have a perfect background. And this Post-it tape is perfect for doing something like this because it never tears your paper. Another good tape would be the purple tape, and I will put this all in the supply list. So there's a link down below. You can click on that, and it'll take you to the supply list and lots of other close-ups and more information there as well, plus tons of inspiration. But for right now, I'm taking a blending brush and some aqua mist. I'm going to be using all Paper Tray inks here, and I will list those as well in our supply list. But the aqua mist, I'm just going around it very lightly, a little bit more concentration in the corners, because I want those to be slightly more intense. And now I decided to add just a little bit more intensity by adding tropical teal. Now it looks really like I really went to town on that and made it really dark, but it's mostly on the tape. I am making the bottom a little bit darker in the corners than I did at the top, but overall it still is a really soft background. And now the big reveal. I'm going to peel off the tape, and like I say, if you have measured properly, then there's no trimming afterwards. You just have a perfect little border going around it, and that I think is just fabulous. And now I'm going to take the eraser and get rid of those tiny little pencil marks that I had made earlier. And with that done, now I have taken out my MISTI. I've taken some stamps that I'm going to stamp, the pots and the house plants and a lamp. And I have mounted them onto the door of the MISTI. And I'm going to do some shelves in that later, but that's going to be done separately. So I'm going to start out with this one house plant, and I'm using green parakeet, and then a new leaf, and then ripe avocado. And if you've watched my videos before, you know that I like to blend inks. I put the ripe avocado near the bottom so it's a little bit darker shading, and the green parakeet more towards the top. And I do blend it with my finger there so I don't get any blotchiness. I am stamping on a piece of Bristol paper, again, because I want it to blend really nicely. And because the finish on Bristol paper, it does really blend the inks very, very well, and it doesn't grab. So the nice thing about a MISTI, as we all know, or any stamp positioner, is that you can stamp it more than once in the same place. and that's why I'm using it here, because I was not quite sure if I could get a good impression the first time. So I'm just moving around that ivy stamp, and I'm going to start out with New Leaf. I'm going to use a little bit of ripe avocado, and I'm also going to be using a little bit of the aqua mist, and I'm actually going to use a little bit of tropical teal. I want it to be darker. I want it to be a little bit different color than the other houseplant that I just did. And ivy is often darker, so I thought that that would make a nice color combination, and it would give it some contrast to the other houseplant. So I just tap away in different sections with these different colors, blend it with my finger, and then stamp it as many times as I think I need to until I get the color that I'm really looking for. I went back over it over the light green because I wanted to just add a little bit of that. And so if you've watched my videos before, you know that I tinker with this for a while until I get it just the way that I like it. And once I do, then I can wipe it all off and I can go on to doing the pots. Now I'm going to start with the large pot, and I'm going to use melon berry. And I'm going to, for the shading, I'm going to use a tiny bit of Americana. And I'm just going to do the little edges at the bottom and the edges going up the top, very slight, blend it with my finger, and stamp it again. Now for the next pot, I'm using Tropical Teal with Enchanted Evening for the shading part. And be sure you wipe off around wherever you're stamping, because you don't want it to touch the other stamps. I do like to do it this way. It's so much more efficient, at least to me. But don't be sure you don't you wipe everything off each time you stamp, so you're not contaminating the other stamp. Here is the lamp. I'm using fine linen and a little bit of honey nut for the shading. And you know, I just stamp it until I think that I have it the way that I would like it. And then wipe it off. Now I did, I'm going to stamp this little half circle for the bulb. I may or may not use it, but I like to stamp it. And I'm going to, I think, stamp it again because I did touch it with a different color, and so it contaminated it. And then if you notice on here, I stamped a tiny bit of another bit of that ivy. I wanted another bit to kind of fill in, and you'll see what I'll do with that a little bit later. But for right now, I'm going to take these. There are some different kind of ornament or designs that you can add to your pots. And so I am taking the Americana, and I'm going to stamp this design on there. That's what's kind of cool about this set, is that it gives you the opportunity to really have your own expression. Now I turned up, you see, this is one of the reasons why I use not only the glass mat, because it's easy to clean, but I have my light board underneath it. And I can see a little bit more plainly when I do something like this, so that I can attempt to get it straight. Now for this smaller pot, I'm going to use some anti-static powder, because I'm going to stamp that design that goes with it with Versamark ink so that I can white heat emboss it. And that way it'll create a nice pattern on it. So I'm just going to stamp that as best I can. I try not to get my hair in the picture, so I'm not as close as I like to be. So sometimes, you know, I don't get it as perfect as I like, but just bear with me here. And so I got that stamped, and now I'm going to sprinkle on some white embossing powder, and I will heat emboss that so that we'll have a really nice white pattern. You know, and these are kind of retro, modern, but kind of a a retro 50s look to it too. So I really like this stamp set. Now I'm taking a piece of Desert Storm. It has kind of a brown tweedy look to it. Taking the shelf. It's a wood shelf. And I'm going to stamp a couple of these, and I'm using cocoa bean. And again, remember, I will mark, I will, when you click on the link down below, you can go, when you go to the blog, it'll tell you all the colors that I use for each one of them. And now I'm taking some True Black, and I'm stamping that nice little kind of rope or wires that go to the lamp. And I'm going to set that aside. So now that true to my nature, I do all the stamping first, and then I'm going to do all the cutting. And so I have these, the dies, and I'm going to take all my dies apart. This is the first time I've used it, so I haven't taken it apart. I'm going to, and so you'll see that in a minute. And I'm going to take some Harvest Gold, and I'm going to cut out a sunburst. And then I will cut out with some white from some white cardstock. I use 110. I'm going to cut out 4 of those rectangles. I'm using the Hero Arts Infinity dies there. And so here we go. I have all of these all set out. You can see I always put my dies on a magnetic pad so they don't get lost. But I have them all set except for this one plant. This one, the die is solid and I can't tell where I'm positioning it, and I don't want to cut it off. I don't want to put it in the wrong position and snip off one of the leaves inadvertently. So the way I do it to make sure I get it in the right place before I cut is I run a pencil going around it just to see, and then take a look to see if it's in the right place, and if it is, I can tape it down. If it's not, I can reposition it. That way I know that it's going to cut properly. So now I have everything cut, and I'm just taking some bright buttercup, and I'm with a blending brush, and I'm adding this to the sun rays. And you'll see how I'm going to use these sun rays in just a minute, but I'm first going to just add a little bit of extra color. I like to start with colored paper and then add ink onto it. It just adds a little more dimension. Now for the shading, I'm going to use Summer Sunrise, so that's going to be up closer to the top. And now I have all the pieces all ready. I have a Desert Storm card base, and now I'm taping down with double stick tape with my trusty new double stick tape dispenser, which I'm really getting used to and liking a whole lot. It's a lot lighter and it goes on very smoothly. And I'm mounting it onto this card base, which you can see it's a little bit, the card base is a little bit bigger than the panel that we created. And then I'm taking these rectangles because I'm going to create an illusion of a window. And so I want to position these 4 squares. I'm going to put a little tape on the back of each of these. And again, my ruler is invaluable. I don't have to go through a lot. I know that about 1 inch and 1/8 from the edge of the card base to this, if I just hold it there, I know that I can just position these squares, or these rectangles, excuse me, and I can put them right in position. And as for the spacing, I can kind of eyeball that and see how that works out. But it's so easy to just put this ruler up to the edge, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. The other side will be a lot simpler because I already have one in position. So I'm going 1 inch and 1/8 from the side. Now this, my card panel that I started with, not the card base because that's a little bit bigger, I think was 4 1/4 by 6 1/2 is what I started with. So it's a little bit elongated. So I'm going to put those in position. So now I have, in keeping with this kind of retro modern card, I have this essence of a window. I'm going to put a shelf down at the bottom, and then I'm going to mount another shelf. You know, because I had stamped these with cocoa bean onto that onto that Desert Storm. And now I'm taking that Sunburst, and you can see I trimmed it back so that it will fit underneath the lamp. I have all these pieces that have foam tape behind them, so they're popping up, and same with these, with most everything here. So the pots and the house plants. So you can see that's how I want to have it. So now that I kind of get an idea, yeah, that's going to work for me. Now I'm going to now adhere them down. And you'll notice that, the sunburst I'm using as the rays coming out of the lamp. Now, when you see the last picture at the end, when we do a close-up, you'll see there's going to be a slight change. So take a real look at it now, and then you'll see the change, and you can see which one you like best. So I have that little bit of ivy, where I just cut, not only stamped, but cut a little bit of the ivy, just the top part, because I wanted to make this just a little bit fuller. So I'm just going to tuck it behind there with a little bit of glue. And now those are on position. I'm going to just have so that the lamp doesn't look like it's just kind of dangling there on its own. I want to kind of ground it by putting the wire that it's connected to. And I had stamped that stamp with true black ink on the white cardstock, and then trimmed it really, really, really closely. And I'm going to just trim off that little bit. So the only thing we have left to do is a sentiment. I'm using a brand new mini sentiment set. It's called Just Because, and it has this really cool hello. It's just kind of perfect for this because it has that modern look to it. I wasn't sure if I wanted it in white or if I wanted it in the blue, but so I stamped the hello in black, true black ink, in the white and in the blue, but the white won out in the end. So I put some foam tape on the back of that and just going to mount that in. Now I'm going to do one more thing that I don't do very often, and I should. I always in my cards put an inside panel instead of stamping directly on my card base. So I take a white panel, and there's these great Just Because sentiments, inside sentiments that are brand new as well. And I'm stamping that with true black ink, and I'm going to mount that to the inside. And like I say, I always use a card. There's a couple of reasons. One, I can use a contrasting color so it kind of sets it off. But also, if I make a mistake, then I just did it on the panel, not on the card, the actual card that I just spent a lot of time working on. And I can just do a new panel if I need to. So there it is. It's all done. Now look at the rays coming out of the lamp. I shortened them a little bit on the left and the right. I personally like this one better, but maybe you like the other one that's a little bit fuller. You'll have to just let me know in the comments which you like best. But I really enjoyed this project, and I certainly hope that you did too. And if you did, we would be over the moon if you would give us a thumbs up and subscribe. We really would appreciate that. And then here is just a small list of the things that we use: the growth Stampin' Dies, the sunbursts, the Hero Arts Infinity rectangles, and then lots of little ink cubes. The full supply, everything is down below. You can click on the link and it'll take you right to that supply list. And again, I appreciate you sticking with me, and I will see you next time.